Okay, so the article that I am doing this presentation on is the 6 ways to repair declining social trust. I got it off of the SSIR website. And what this article is talking about is how to build up trust again with our government and within our society. And it's not just the United States, but it is talking global. And the main social problem that is trying to be addressed here is just right there in the title. It's about building social trust again. So the institutions that are involved are, the government, the media, businesses, big corporations, government officials, non-government officials, police force, kind of, all of those like government type officials are where we need to build our trust with them. The community has lost their trust, and it's been having negative effects on our society. Not just in the United States, but also in on the globe, around the globe. I think there was actually one study in 2017. It was the Edelman Trust Barometer research project, and they studied public trust across the globe and shown that this is the first time within 17 years that the trust with our government is declining as opposed to improving or being stable. There was another one from Pew Research Center study, and their study showed that only 14% of the globe actually feel that they have a lot of confidence that the government officials will do what they need to do that's best for the country. Only 14% of that population believes that the government will do the right thing for the government. So this article, the innovation that it's talking about are 6 different ways, 6 different paths to work on building trust again. So there was a Harvard professor called Tarun Kauna, and now this Harvard professor um, wrote a book and wrote an article and has a research, and it shows that the lack of trust within our government leads to less citizens complying with laws and regulations and paying taxes and supporting their neighbors and among other things. The less trust that the citizens have within their community, the more likely they are to not comply with all of those things. So that's just a major societal issue in within itself. So the first idea or path that the article suggests is to deliver real benefits. And now these benefits are coming like from our schools and from our hospitals and from our police task force. So they believe that they can do better in executing services that they give. So with in order for them to execute it, they do have to study and do programs and do research on improving how they execute their benefits to their citizens, to their members, to the people in the society. And this is one of the ways that you can work on building trust. And citizens know where they are, they'll be able to see where they've came from. So if citizens are seeing an improvement in how these organizations are executing their services, then they'll be able to look back on how it was before and see how it's been improving. It's just how it is. Another reason or another path is to help develop good leaders. So a lot of the times, the issues that we have with trust right now is that our leaders, our government, are not sufficiently caring for us. They're worried about themselves. They're worried about their assets. They're worried about their allies, and they're put into a position of leadership. So they're only worrying about themselves as opposed to the country, what's best for the country. So the article talks about how it's a lot harder to change or to help modify the current leaders that we have in the system as opposed to building up new leaders to take over. This actually led to a contribution of like $280 million from the Ford Foundation that contributed to something called the International Fellowship Program. This International Fellowship Program works on and supports building up leaders that are called social change makers, and these social change makers are in like underdeveloped countries and working on making societal change and big change for not just the small community but for the entire society that it lives with. Another path is by strengthening the accountability that the government has. So some of the suggestions that it mentions is like government openness, freedom of press, ability for citizens to call out corruption when they see it, and kind of like stopping the offshore money laundering, since that is a big issue and it happens a lot with government officials as well as laundering money offshores and out of the country where it's a little more protected, among other things. And also another suggestion that it makes is for the government data to be public for the citizens, and that's including budget and that's including what's being spent, but making that data available to the citizens in a public way, so that it doesn't seem like they're hiding things and that there's no secrets. Um, the fourth way to help build trust is actively engaging their citizens. So there was in Ukraine there was a program that was called the Citizen Engagement and Reform Program. That program worked on building trust with the police force again. So in Ukraine, an issue that they were having was the police force were, stopping and citizens and wanting them to, bribe them. So, pay me money and I won't take you in, kind of thing. So they wanted to build. These citizens had no more trust in the workforce. They were corrupt. They were not helpful. They weren't doing their job in protecting. They were worried about money. So what they did was develop this program, the Citizen Engagement Reform Program, and they brought in a whole new task force, a community task force for policing, and they helped change the perspectives. Of course, it wasn't done in a day. It took time, but it took the government being actively participating in this program and kind of changing the perspectives that the citizens would now have about the workforce the police force, that they can be trusted, that they're there to help, they're there to protect. So that was one of the programs that they gave as an example. So basically, this ideal of engaging citizens is it's stating that citizens should feel like they're a part of the community, and in feeling like part of the community, they're more likely to trust the community and to trust the government officials. Another one is, or the fifth one is to stop um, excluding certain parties. This is a big one that we talk about, especially in the United States, is discrimination. And it's called, they titled this section Social Inclusion. And with social inclusion, they want to stop discrimination based on, on race, on gender, on ethnicity, on age, on religious practices, on, disability, on so much, so much. And these are things that we kind of already talk about now in the United States. They're often trying to, make sure that we accommodate people who have disabilities. And that's not just physical, it's mental and physical disabilities. So just kind of continuing on that, because although we are working on it here in the United States, there are other countries across the globe that are not, and they still discriminate based on age and sex, and gender is a big one that they are still being strongly discriminated against. So kind of, and this is something that goes across the globe and within the United States, allowing residents to own land, and that's something we have here. Immigrants that live within the United States, it's kind of difficult for them to own a house or to own land because they are not legal within the country. So kind of allowing social inclusion, allowing the opportunity for anybody that lives and contributes to that country to be able to get benefits back. So being able to be included in the community and the society and own land and own houses and participate, get skills and training and being able to go to school and having equal access to all of that. Also, it mentions having the health workers having cultural competency, which is something that we're talking about. We've talked about within our macro classes over the past couple of years, that cultural competency with our health workers, with both mental health and medical health, making sure that we're understanding, the other ethnicities and cultures, and understanding their traditions and stuff like that. Just kind of being more competent and aware of other cultures. the last path, or the last tip that they're giving us, is tip number 6 on improving trust, is actually following up. So it's called establish a commitment. So a lot of times the government will say, we're going to work towards this, we're going to work towards that, but they don't actually set down the steps and the plan to take there and actively start planning it. So the government officials need to start taking steps, step by step, on how they will work on building up the trust. Because without this trust, it kind of goes back to what Mr. or Mrs. Tarun Kahana, the Harvard professor, mentioned in her book, his or her book, that without trust within our society, these citizens are going to start, not abiding by the laws and not participating in what needs to be done. And especially if they feel like their vote doesn't matter, their voice doesn't matter. It's really relevant to what, is going on currently in our current events with the politics and about Donald Trump. And many people feel that, the election process was rigged. So without that trust, without citizens feeling that they are able to actively have a voice and actively have a say in what our government officials are doing, or who they're going to be, the trust is going to be minimal. And without the trust, the society is going to start going downhill. Not just with their perspectives, but also with law and money and finance and everything like that. So that was the innovation I did. The end.